thank you, of course, to Paul and John for the presentation and for running through the slides. I think everybody will agree it's been incredibly informative. Throughout the session, I think there have been a couple of questions that have popped up. So I think if I run through and just ask these in the order that they've come in, and then Paul, John, step in as you need to, and if you're both quiet, I'll nominate one of you. So we'll run it in that way. So the first question is, if you're administering the Green Deal, when will it start, and is there support for businesses, or is it home only?
So does this refer to the Green Homes grant scheme, I'm presuming, as opposed to the Green Deal? Because if so, yeah, that is just covered around homes at the moment. So
right. Okay. So for that one, I think, and I can only assume it's the Green Homes deal. So that will just be focused on domestics.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we do. We have had like requests specifically around support available to small medium enterprises, and obviously what we're able to do is through BEIS, we often get information on funding that's available as and when that becomes available. So we can always make sure that when anything does come through BEIS, often that information doesn't always trickle down to individuals and specific businesses and others. So we can we're not really specifically supporting any programs around business funding, but obviously where there's opportunities to link into work that's been done in across local authorities, we're more than happy to try and signpost to that support as well.
Perfect. Okay, thank you, Paul. And I think, does that cover in general how people submit projects to the energy hubs? Is it just that initial contact, or?
Yeah, so we've got a expression of interest form that again I can circulate. So yeah, we're interested to find out about any projects where there is support required or where there are any barriers to actually taking those forward. So there's an expression of interest form to submit, which has got where you just complete the details of the project. It's only a couple of pages, a couple of sides of a PDF. So that can be submitted, and then so at least then we can log that, and that can go in terms of our reporting to BEIS as well. So John, I don't know if there's anything different that you guys do in the Southwest that you want to add to that.
Very similar, yeah. You can either just email us and we'll talk you through it. There's also on the website a form you can fill in which takes you through, and it's information we use to evaluate. We do have a particular remit that BEIS have given us, and so if we're going to be giving a substantial amount of support to a project, then it would have to, we're looking at, is there a real hurdle or a barrier that the organisation is experiencing that it couldn't otherwise just pay for some consultancy support? That's where we can step in. And is it, deliverable within a reasonable amount of time? And is it within the energy strategy, and does it have senior support? So there are a few sort of tick boxes to think about, but generally we find we're able to help most people.
So I think, John, just as a continuation to that, so it isn't just expressly focused at local authorities. It could well be that business parks, SMEs can approach you as well.
Yeah, I mean, we're essentially, I suppose the majority of the clients are local authorities currently, or community organisations, but we do work with the private sector as well. I think, so that, for example, I'm thinking of a large-scale private sector redevelopment site of a power station that we helped. We were able to help, tell them about grant schemes, whether they could get support for examining a heat network on site, where they could get grants to exploit waste heat recovery. So at the very least, we can signpost and potentially help them write applications for grant schemes. there may well be some public sector involvement. If there is if we can show a public benefit, maybe then potentially we could actually be delivering a piece of work for them on top of that as well. So it's sort of case by case, and so I would say get in touch with us and we'll just talk to people about the options. We're quite flexible about that.
Okay, thank you, John. There's a question that's come in from Baka Bahaj, which I think is probably directed to you both. So the hub's been funded until March 2021. Is there any update on extension funding for the hubs and the plans for the future?
Well, at the moment, we're from the, I don't know if it's with the Southwestern, but yeah, so we're funded until October of next year at the moment. So as at this stage, that's kind of what we're working towards. But obviously, if that changes at any point, we will let you know. And I think, from what we understand, whatever happens post October, there's going to be mechanisms in place, in terms of that sort of continuation of support. And sorry, just going back to my colleague John's just mentioned as well in terms of that on the chat, there's some of the businesses that we're supporting as well. So we are doing some projects as well within the local and within the Greater South East Hub, where we're working in terms of supporting business parks on specific projects as well, which John's just circulated the details of.
Perfect. Thank you, Paul. And it is worth just pointing out to everybody that also in the chat function, if hopefully you've all found it on the right hand side, there is a link there to the short feedback form for today's webinar. So if you could let us know what worked, what hasn't worked, and we can try and improve the webinars in future. And also there is a bit of detail there with regards to the next webinar, the Environmental Act, Brexit and the Future of Sustainability, that's on the 25th of November. Are there any other questions that anyone wants to cover off? I think we've looked at the points around SMEs and business parks, and the fact that actually both Paul and John and the energy hubs in general are approachable for a wider range of projects. It's not just focused on the LAs. I think you've given a good overview there in terms of, I think, the early stage in the application process and the route for funding. Really, that kickoff is just contacting the energy hubs and starting to engage that conversation and overview of projects. I mean, John, Paul, is there anything that you'd want to add, or does anybody have any additional questions there?
Just make a sort of advert for the Rural Community Energy Fund. There's still plenty of funds in that. So whilst you may not be particularly involved, but if you do hear, please pass on the message about RCEF grant schemes. We'd be delighted to see. We had about 2 million available, and we've still got a hefty chunk of that to award up to £40,000. So do pass on the word to that one.
No, indeed, and I think from my experience, at least from a network operator perspective, a lot of projects do struggle at that early stage in terms of being able to attract funding and support for developing project ideas and getting that through to a kind of business case proposal. So I would expect that should be quite an attractive offer for a number of stakeholders that are out there. So thank you both.
I was going to say as well, in terms of any other information that anyone's got, so more than happy from email details to be circulated. So if everybody does want to get in touch with any specific questions or just request any information, more than happy to engage with them on that.
Perfect. No, thank you, Paul. Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Going back to one of the earlier questions that was raised, and I didn't want to steer the focus of the session too far away from the energy hubs, but Richard had asked if I could provide a bit of an overview from SSE's perspective. I think it's just worth noting that I work for the networks division of SSE, so SSEN, part of a much wider group of the SSE businesses, and I think across SSE renewables and the wider business, it's fair to say that there is both an outlay of challenges from a networks perspective, much as John's mentioned, and Paul, quite often the issue faced by new projects is potentially grid capacity and connecting to the network. So primarily my team and I are responsible for providing a wider range of options, a wider array of options for connections to be made to the network, against the kind of traditional reinforcement options that have been there in the past. But I think it's just key to note that it links very much with the introduction that we're working with energy hubs, local communities, local authorities, to try and map out a pathway of a more efficient, a more sustainable, a more active energy network in future that helps to develop and support these projects as they come through the pipeline. So kicking back, we've had another question come in from Mark. So what is the definition of a rural community, i.e. in terms of applying for a rural community energy fund grant? Is there any clarification that John Paul you can offer?
Yeah, happy to take that one. The Office for National Statistics has sort of defined everywhere in the country according to a definition. And initially, the definition was a place with fewer than 10,000 inhabitants. Now, that was done some years ago, so certain places which are still classified as rural now have more than 10,000. The definitive way we decide is we use DEFRA produced a GIS mapping tool, which is very easily accessible online, and you just put in your location, and that will tell you whether you are classified as rural or not. I mean, generally speaking, if it's sort of open countryside, you're going to be rural. So, for example, obviously the whole of New Forest district is rural. The whole of Isle of Wight is rural, and a lot of Wiltshire, for example. So quite a substantial area of the country is defined as rural. And you can just see on this map, there's a red line. One side of the red line, you're rural, the other side, you're urban.
Oh, thank you, John. And I suppose, again, it's just worth noting that if anyone's got any confusion as to whether they're in a rural or an urban or just on the border of either, that to come and have a chat with you both.
Exactly, yeah. Very happy to help you on that one.
No, perfect. So I think we've only got a few minutes left. I do just want to state again, if those of you that have dialed in today could fill in the feedback form, make a note of the next webinar as well. But the feedback form is really the key thing. We do want to make sure that actually we're presenting a series of webinars that you find useful, and you know, hopefully today is no exception. I think that the information that Paul and John have provided has been of incredible use, not just hopefully to all of you, but for me personally, and things that I can relate to stakeholders as I'm engaging with them in my day to day. So I think it's just left for me again to, you know, please do fill in the feedback form. Please make a note of the next webinar. Massive thanks to Paul and John for the huge array of information and the offers of contact that you've made today, and deepest thanks to you all for dialing in. Yeah, I hope you all enjoy the rest of what at least here is a very overcast and rainy day. Thank you all again for attending.